Okay, so we're diving deep into real estate today,
Mm.
looking at all the legal stuff involved with buying and selling property.
Always an adventure, right?
Definitely. Lots of paperwork, lots of contracts.
Absolutely. It can be a little intimidating for folks.
Definitely. And, you sent me some really interesting notes. And one thing that stood out was you mentioned listing agreements.
Right.
So for those of us who, don't speak real estate legalese, what exactly is a listing agreement?
Yeah, so a listing agreement, it's basically the core of the whole real estate transaction when you're selling a property. Like, you can't really get started without it. It's this legally binding contract between the seller, the person who's selling the house, and their real estate broker. And it kind of lays out all the ground rules, like how the whole selling process is going to go down.
Ah, okay. So it's like the playbook for the whole thing.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's not just about, like, the broker finding a buyer. There's more to it.
Oh, yeah, way more. A good listing agreement, it protects both sides of the deal. So for the seller, it ensures the broker's actually working in their best interests, like getting them the best price, best terms for their property.
Yeah.
And for the broker, it makes things super clear about what they're responsible for and, how they're going to get paid for all their hard work.
Right. Okay, so it's making sure everyone's on the same page from the start.
Exactly.
Avoid any surprises down the line.
Definitely. That's the goal. Minimize surprises.
Now, I know you mentioned these listing agreements can be tricky. What are some of the things that people should, like, really pay attention to in those agreements? What are some common pitfalls, that sellers fall into?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is to understand what type of listing agreement you're signing because there are different kinds. So you have like exclusive right to sell agreements, which means the broker gets paid no matter who finds the buyer, even if the seller finds someone themselves. And then there are non-exclusive agreements, which give the seller more flexibility to find a buyer on their own, maybe save some money on commission. But it also means the broker might be less motivated to put as much effort in, if they think the seller might end up finding a buyer themselves.
Gotcha.
So understanding the difference is really crucial. And then, of course, you've got the commission structure, which can be like a flat fee or percentage of the sale. Sometimes it's a combination of both.
Right.
So sellers really need to understand all these nuances before they sign on the dotted line. Have a lawyer look it over, ask lots of questions. Because once you sign, you're bound by that agreement.
Yeah, so it's not just about, oh, this house looks great, let's sell it. There's a lot of legal stuff you got to be aware of.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so that's the initial phase, getting the property on the market. But as you move, like, further into a real estate deal, what other kinds of contracts come into play? Because I imagine it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
With the listing agreement.
Oh, no. It's just the beginning. Once you have a potential buyer, you're talking about a whole new stack of paperwork. Like the buyer will likely need a mortgage to finance the purchase, right?
Right.
And that comes with its own whole set of terms and conditions, interest rates, repayment schedules, all that.
Sure.
Then there's the inspection report. So a professional inspector comes in, checks out the property, makes sure there are no hidden problems like a leaky roof or faulty wiring. And that report outlines any potential issues. And that can become, a point of negotiation. The buyer might ask the seller to make certain repairs before they move forward or, ask for a price reduction based on the inspection findings.
Gotcha.
And then you also have disclosures, which are legally required documents where the seller has to reveal any known problems with the property. Things they're aware of that a buyer might not discover during a normal inspection. It could be anything from like a noisy neighbor to a history of flooding in the basement.
Right.
It's all about transparency.
It sounds a bit like navigating a legal maze, honestly.
It kind of is.
It is.
Yeah.
All these contracts, each with its own purpose and implications.
Exactly. And each one carries legal weight. You can't just back out of them without potential consequences. That's why it's so important for both the buyer and the seller to really understand what they're signing.
So you've really got to do your homework.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about, falling in love with a house or finding a buyer.
Right.
You've got to understand the legal side of things.
Couldn't agree more. A little knowledge can go a long way in making sure the whole real estate transaction goes smoothly and successfully.
Great advice. So we've covered some of the essentials. The listing agreements, mortgages, inspections, disclosures. That's a lot to take in.
It is.
Any final thoughts for our listeners out there who might be, getting ready to wade into the real estate world?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to remember is that every real estate transaction is unique. It's like a fingerprint.
Ah.
So take your time, ask lots of questions, and don't be afraid to seek legal advice if you need it. Buying or selling a property, it's a big decision. It's probably one of the biggest financial decisions most people will make in their lifetime. So being informed is your best protection.
Fantastic advice. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to real estate. Well, thanks for taking the time to break all this down for us.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
And for our listeners out there, stay tuned for more deep dives on all sorts of fascinating topics.
Yes. Until next time.
Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.
Mm.